It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we move into a Wednesday, Gary, what do you know?
I'm just telling you this. You know, we've said this before. In 2016, Trump was a great communicator. All right?
Yeah, right.
In 2020, we said not a good communicator. He would frustrate the daylights out of us.
Of all the people that could and you would expect to brag about their accomplishments,
yeah,
their political accomplishments,
right.
He was one of the last to do it fully.
Yeah, he did a much better job, this time around.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, Harris takes it to a new level. She takes it to a new level. Seriously,
yeah.
I believe she is, since the dawn of video, she is the worst candidate ever
for any office.
I'm just thinking for president, not for any office.
No, I'm going full on for any office.
But she is the worst, in my opinion, since video has existed. Communicator who has ever run for president, ever.
Yeah.
She's that bad. Yeah. I mean, it's all she has to do when you think about it is be able to answer 5 questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
5 questions. Why did you change your mind on this?
Right.
What do you believe here? And there should have been a consensus that they all came to where she doesn't look like an idiot. And it's, well, I'm doing this from the point of view, please don't judge me. Well, she is an idiot. This is coming from the point of I'm a political consultant for her.
Right. You're actually working. She's paying you.
Right. She's paying me. The goal is that every time you open your mouth, do not make it a Trump campaign ad.
I don't think she can help it. And
here we go. Being on The View. I mean, this was just, and I'm going to play how it became an instant ad.
Yeah.
And I think people are doing it themselves, just editing in, the Trump ending for it.
I've got a little story about it, but let's hear the.
Here we go. All right, this is Harris on The View.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
You walk right into it.
And she made it short enough so you can make it.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
How long was that?
And it was not taken out of context.
Right. A 20-second ad.
Perfect. That's a perfect digital ad.
And he didn't. Whoever did that, I don't know if it was a Trump campaign or somebody did it. I don't know if the Trump campaign is running it. I'd run it all over social media.
Well, here's the thing. It'll be all over social media, and you won't have to pay a dime for it. If it wasn't them.
Right. And you don't have, you really have no production costs. You don't need actors. You don't need a still
editor, which you can have on your phone.
Right. And I shake my head. I mean, every single day I wake up and I'm like, what the hell? And then there's this. Mm-hmm. Here's Biden. And everybody's screaming at him, about Trump, or not Trump, about DeSantis and everything else, and the whole Harris thing about selfishness. And here's Biden's response.
The governor of Florida has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call.
I mean, he's just throwing her under the bus. It's every day now.
It really is. He's going out of his way. And by the way, one of our great listeners, Linda, wrote me and said what we said. Man, he sounds very coherent these days. Was he faking it the whole time, like that mob boss that was walking around with the robe?
Yes.
Is this how it went down? Was this a setup for his own party to throw not just her, but his entire party under the proverbial bus? So I get out of here yesterday morning. I was working. I came back up here, had some work to do. I was up here for a few hours. I left, had to leave, and I was between appointments. I had to come back, but I had time enough to go to the place to do the fast oil change, right? Like, okay, I've got enough time here because I had a cancellation. So it's like, all right, I can fit this in. It's not far. So I go and I show up and I sit down and the view's just coming on. I didn't know if someone was playing something like they were playing the news story of her being on The View. I thought, well, no, this is about the time The View comes on, I think. I don't know because I don't watch it. But for Brian Stelter, you want to review what you said about serious questions? The gushing of Whoopi Goldberg. I couldn't hear it. I was in the waiting room of the oil change place. My truck's in the bay. A couple of other guys had their trucks in the bay. So we had kind of a full waiting room there. And nobody seemed to be interested. And I didn't want to walk up to the TV, stand right in front of this little 32-inch TV so I could hear it, for my job and whatnot, as the only guy in that room that was interested in hearing what she had to say. But they were introducing her, and then Whoopi just came off as just a 6-year-old girl. It was just weird.
And then you have the first two questions from Stern to her.
Yeah.
The first two questions from Howard Stern. You ready for this? Do you nap at all? That was the first question. And the second question, did you like the Prince soundtrack for that Batman movie?
Baba Booey, Baba Booey. Baba Booey, Baba Booey. Baba Booey, Baba Booey.
Has he come out of the house yet?
I don't think so.
Really, I think he should become roommates with Olbermann.
I think he bought a Trader
a basement bunker.
I think he bought a Starbucks and a Trader Joe's to put in his living room, so he doesn't have to leave the house.
For people that don't know it, for the longest time, he wouldn't go out to dinner. He wouldn't do any. He's a putty germaphobe.
And he was a hermit before COVID, and then COVID threw that into overdrive.
Yeah. I like this from Breitbart. Howard Stern used to broadcast audio of people performing sex acts on each other, said Breitbart News' Joe Pollack, posted on X. This interview of Kamala is in that genre. My God. Wow. You can't make this stuff up. And then let's go to CNN as they analyze, her
media appearances,
her performance on The View.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
All right. So
all right.
Here we go.
I want to get to what Priscilla was talking about, in that one of the questions that Kamala Harris was asked was about how she differentiates herself. Is there any daylight, effectively, between what she would do and what the Biden-Harris administration did? Let's watch part of the answer.
We're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Molly, what do you make of that?
I'm surprised, frankly, that she doesn't have more to say about this, given that she and her campaign know that this is one of the main questions that voters have about her. And one of the main things she's been trying to establish as part of her candidacy is the idea that she would represent a break from the past 4 years, and to not be able to come up with something to say in that moment. She continues to not be particularly nimble on her feet in a lot of these interviews, and this is a very obvious question that gave her an opportunity, frankly, to differentiate herself in a way that would have made news, that would have answered, I think, the curiosity of a lot of voters who want to know how she would lead differently, and she's not very specific in laying that out, and she can't point to a decision she would have made differently, which, in an electorate that thinks that doesn't like the way this administration has led, and that doesn't like the track that the country is on, that may not be a very satisfactory answer.
I mean, it's a delicate dance, because it's not as if she's coming in. It's not as if she just fell out of a coconut tree. She's been part of this administration as the vice president for 4 years now. She did later talk about the fact that she would put a Republican in her cabinet, which she first told me over the summer, and then she said, "Oh, that's something that's different."
Yeah. Also, Baba Booey, Baba Booey, Baba Booey. They're so, you can tell they're having to restrain themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, because in
the newsroom, they were screaming, "What the bleep?" They're, right now, the liberal activist media. What you heard there is them basically, they had their composure together. I have no reason to believe that analysis had any anger in it whatsoever. But in my mind, I like to throw that in just for entertainment, because I do know that the leftist activist media right now is upset that they're angry she's not performing. And this all goes back to what I have been saying for weeks now. They have full-on buyer's remorse. They have buyer's remorse because they built their own rule book. You're not going to leapfrog over Kamala Harris if Joe steps out. You can't do that. How dare you? And they're all wishing they had.
I love it, the desperation. Well, she did say that she would put a Republican in her cabinet. Do you think anyone in this country cares about that?
No.
Anyone?
No. In fact, the far left base says you put one Republican in, you'll never get my support. I mean, that's where they are right now.
Well,
nobody's looking for bipartisanship.
But it doesn't mean anything.
No.
Because, okay, I'm going to put Liz Cheney.
And Mitt Romney.
Yeah, or Mitt Romney in there.
Mitt Romney is Secretary of State.
Right.
Yeah.
You think anybody is going to care about that?
No.
I mean,
it only confirms to me who Mitt Romney is.
But it just shows you how desperate they are right now. Yesterday was the first day. We've been looking at the polls, and again, this is a completely unique election, as most elections are, but this one is just, you're never going to see any. I can't say that anymore because you're dealing with Democrats. The odds are you can't see anything as using the F word and then up after it as the Harris campaign. I mean, it's just they do everything wrong every single day. There's nothing that they are getting right. Nothing. I mean, I've never seen, and I know that I had a great talk today with landscape guy that was over today. Incredible guy, 27 years old, runs his own company.
Mm-hmm.
Huge Trump supporter and everything else. And, huge Trump supporter because, at times we all, he goes, when I talk to my other friends, they'll say, well, the things that he says, he goes, yeah, okay, maybe he says some things in a crude way. I don't care. What's he going to do?
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing. When you look at it, you notice that the things that they tried to use against Trump in 2020 don't work anymore. They can't sit there and say, Trump wants a wall.
Mm-hmm. No.
It doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And so the major things that they attacked Trump on in 2020 is now in Trump's favor right now. So, but they don't know where to go. But still, you've got to come up with some strategy And I know what you're saying. You may be saying, Gary, this is their strategy. It's just so bad. It's such a bad strategy that you think that I know what you're saying. You're saying, Gary, this is their strategy. It's just so bad. It seems like they have no strategy, but it is their strategy.
Yeah. No, this is all. They're having meetings about this.
I mean, it's just.
Yeah, there are multiple people involved in the decisions that are having them carry out these horrible media appearances.
Yesterday was the first day where I saw, even across the media, the feeling that, and we're right at about, a little over 3 weeks out, which is when the polls started moving in 2016, and that's why it seems similar,
right?
That there seemed to be a greater consensus that Trump is legitimately up in the polls.
Yeah, right. Well, especially when Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports said that, look, where are the other pollsters putting out data? Why wouldn't you be scrambling to put out as much data as you possibly could if you're a pollster right now? That's what, if it were really close, then those liberal pollsters would be doing just that. If it were neck and neck, if they didn't see a trend that shows her, I'm sorry, there's no other explanation. All of a sudden, they just don't want to do what they do in the season that they do it and when they make their money. This is their season.
Yeah, I don't know. Did any poll come out yesterday? I wasn't even paying attention.
No, I didn't see any.
Okay. Yeah, new state polls, Insider Advantage, Trump +2. AARP, Arizona, Trump +2. Texas, Trump +6. Florida, Trump 14. Virginia, CNU, Harris up 11. I don't buy that one there.
No.
I think Virginia's closer.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if Virginia isn't closer.
Right.
I still think it's a tough one for the GOP to win, but I don't believe Harris is up by 11 in that.
Where are all the daily major polls? Where are all the pollsters being extremely active right now, a little over 3 weeks from the election, 3.5 weeks from the election?
866-98 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. As the seasons change, so does truck maintenance. Cold weather can affect everything from your batteries and your air brake system to tire inflation and fuel lines. Make sure your tires are ready to roll through winter with the following maintenance tip. Underinflation is a leading cause of tire failures during winter because when the temperature drops, so does your tire pressure. Check your tire pressure before every trip to ensure they're properly inflated and to get the best footprint and traction on the roads. Conduct daily visual tire inspections to make sure you haven't picked up harmful debris on the road. Find a trustworthy tire service provider today so you'll be ready as the seasons change.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, Hurricane Milton.
Wow. Yeah, what a massive storm this is in terms of its strength right now, even though they believe the strength will be diminished before it makes landfall, but also the footprint. The wind field of this storm, of potentially how wide it could be and how many people would be affected by, at the very least, tropical storm force winds on the outer bands is unbelievable. And we're going to talk with someone here coming up here in just a bit more about that storm. We'll get more. The latest on Milton, when to expect landfall, where they expect landfall to be. But you see right now, I think the good news is we're seeing more and more stories that show people are taking this storm seriously and they're getting out of the way. They're evacuating, and that's just the way it should be. I think local and state officials there in Florida, it appears from what we have seen, have done a very good job at motivating people to get out of the way of the storm, which you absolutely should.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And I'm Gary McNamara along with Eric Harley. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose if you can't listen live overnight.
Hurricane Milton, 1-4, definitely is definitely going to make history in terms of major hurricanes. Let's get more as we go to the National Weather Service. Meteorologist George Rizzuto is with the National Weather Service Miami Forecast Office, and he is with us right now. Mr. Rizzuto, tell us the latest on Milton. What do we know, and when do we expect it to make landfall?
Yeah, so Hurricane Milton is currently a Category 5 hurricane, a major hurricane just northeast of the Yucatan Peninsula. So it's heading generally northeastward late this evening at around 12 miles per hour, and is forecast to make landfall sometime Wednesday evening along the Central Florida coastline as a major hurricane.
What are we looking in terms of the wind field right now? There was a lot of reports that came out during the day on Tuesday and into the evening, Tuesday evening in recent hours, about how wide the wind field could be. What do we expect? What does the forecast say about how wide this hurricane might be?
So as it's heading northeastward, kind of as it's about to make that final landfall, it is going to be expanding the wind field. So the largest winds expected are going to be around 130 miles per hour at landfall, which is just about a low-end Category 4 storm. But those tropical storm force winds could extend all the way down to South Florida and into the Panhandle as well.
What do we know also about the predictability? I know that the updates come out from the National Hurricane Center every few hours or as needed, but certainly, and I know that it's not a perfect science because these hurricanes tend to have a mind of their own sometimes, and they wobble a bit. But in terms of the landfall, in terms of the strength, and then also the possibility of diminished strength before landfall, where do we sit right now on that forecast? The predictability is, or at least the certainty is getting higher and higher as we're getting closer to the event here. The models are tightening up kind of on a region somewhere between Tampa and Fort Myers for a landfall location. So yeah, with that center eye wobbling a little bit, that can change the landfall location at least a little bit by a few miles or so. So there is still some uncertainty there where that eye will make landfall. But as we get closer and closer, it is looking like it's going to be somewhere between Tampa and Fort Myers.
Yeah, I've seen. Thanks so much for being here, George. And it's tough for us to tell when you look at the cone of uncertainty, but it seems as if over the last couple of updates, you're predicting, or the National Hurricane Center is predicting, it's going to move a little bit more south of Tampa than it was maybe what it was showing yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday that was kind of a worst-case scenario forecast for Tampa, just passing just to the north of Tampa Bay, which would have pushed kind of that maximum surge right into the bay. The model trends today have been shifting a little bit south, so the current forecast is calling for a landfall just south of Tampa Bay, which is a little bit better of a situation for Tampa, but a little bit worse for Fort Myers. So there still is some time for that to shift a little bit back north or even further south. So that entire area kind of between just north of Tampa and Fort Myers is within that realm of possibility for a landfall still.
In terms of the potential for storm surge, what are we looking at the highest right now in terms of what it could get to?
The highest storm surge right now is about 10 to 15 feet between Egmont Key and Boca Grande, Florida. So that's a pretty catastrophic surge there. But you could get surge all the way down to Flamingo of 3 to 5 feet, and as far north as Indian Pass, which is kind of around that panhandle of Florida of 1 to 3 feet. So it is a large system. It is going to be pushing some storm surge flooding basically across the entire west coast of the Florida Peninsula.
When the eye wall comes over land, and it's expected, the forecast is showing that Milton will cross Florida and then go into the Atlantic. Will it gain speed as it does so, as the eye wall gets over land? Will it gain speed and move quicker than it's been moving? What's expected there?
It could speed up a little bit, and it will start interacting with a front, so it is going to start to become more extratropical in nature. But And as it does so, it is expected to widen. So that tropical storm force wind field is going to remain pretty wide, even as it passes back into the open Atlantic as well. So we could be seeing those stronger tropical storm force winds linger even behind the system.
Is it going to the latest or the update from 10 p.m. Central shows it's still a hurricane? I mean, quite far off the Florida coast. Is it going to pick up energy when it hits the Atlantic? Is the Atlantic still warm enough to do that?
There is still plenty of energy out there. It's not anticipated after it makes landfall and then enters the open Atlantic to maintain that major hurricane strength. But at least as it's heading northeast into the Gulf of Mexico, there is plenty of warm water and energy to maintain that major hurricane strength. And it is forecast to be a Category 4 as it kind of closes in on the western Florida coast.
High water, flooding from storm surge and heavy rain, the most dangerous part of any hurricane, but these are very destructive winds. And then we have to try and factor in, if you can at all, and this would be my question, tornado spawns. If with such a wide wind field here that is expected in the forecast, does that increase the chances of tornado spawns from the storm?
It does a little bit. You can get those isolated tornadoes within the rain bands as they kind of spiral around the system. And those are going to be pretty isolated, but they can be pretty quick when they happen. So those tropical tornadoes tend to be a little bit more short-lived tornadoes and a little bit more difficult to spot on radar. So that does make it a little bit more difficult to predict those.
Hurricane Milton headed directly for Florida as we speak. Meteorologist George Rizzuto at the National Weather Service Miami Forecast Office. We greatly appreciate your valuable time, Mr. Rizzuto. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. It's you saw probably that the plane that flew into the storm.
Yeah.
And some of it was interior footage from inside the plane and how rough those rides can be. You know, when you're growing up and you think, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a pilot, I want to, all these things as kids. And then you start learning about the dangers of being an astronaut or a pilot, or in this case, trying to get as much information as you can from inside the storm. It's you just have to take your hat off and have tremendous respect for individuals who do that. They seem to be in good spirits given the situation that they were in, but wow. What a video.
I know, and I went up with the Thunderbirds back in 98, I believe it was. And it was just, and they told me, we'll just fly straight and level, or we'll do everything that we do in the show, including 9Gs. You go weightless, you can throw take your glove off, throw it up into the air. We'll let you fly it for a little bit, and then we'll take the 9Gs. Well, I'm telling you, 9Gs is no fun. And even though it was thrilled, you are so fried, by it. And I would have done it. They wouldn't allow me to do it now. I'm too old. But I do that again. I don't know if I do a hurricane plane, but what would make me want to do it is when you come through and all of a sudden you're in the eye. And to see, especially if it's a well-defined eye and it's not, really large, that has to be one of the most spectacular things you'll ever see, that any human can see on the planet Earth. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It would be an experience. Again, it seems to be, and this is, I think, at least moving in the right direction in terms of people being motivated to get out of the way of the storm. First of all, local and state officials there in Florida have been much more, they said from the start they were going to be much more firm on getting people out of the way of this storm. But it also seems to be the reaction, it was, I think, anecdotal, but the reports coming out yesterday from the media that showed more and more locals saw this storm for what it is on the potential. And the fact that this is going to be one that makes history that people will talk about. When you talk about that, such a wide wind field, with winds that stretch out from the tropical force winds at the very least, on the low end, which are still dangerous, as far as 260 miles out from
the eye wall, that is a massive, massive footprint of a storm, which means, and they said potentially, this means people in the panhandle of Florida could feel tropical storm force winds. And that's something, again, that you have to be constantly aware of. With Helene, there was a lot of focus, always is, on where it makes landfall, but we know now in the wake of Helene, trying to pick up the pieces in other states, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and these areas that were all affected by massive amounts of wind and water. And it's, again, when, as a nation, we're looking on for those of us that weren't directly affected by the storm, as we watch and we try and make sense of how you actually pick up the pieces and rebuild after a storm, or if you rebuild, one like this to come along again within days of Helene is mind-boggling.
Well, your
about.
Heart breaks for those people that got hit. Now they're getting hit again. I was watching a lot of Fox weather yesterday, the Fox Weather Channel, and the reporters very, very sensitive to go into the areas where businesses are trying to rebuild, knowing they're going to be hit again. Mm-hmm. And one reporter was out there, and the guy in the business that was boarded up opened the door, saw her, and closed the door again. And she just said, "We just let them be. Let them be, because you don't understand." She said, "I've lived in a number of hurricanes. I know what the feeling is. People are like, they're completely just devastated because they've lost everything." Another friend of mine, Ray Collins, he was an anchor in the Tampa, Sarasota area, a TV anchor, well-known TV anchor, and in Buffalo, New York. He's originally from Buffalo. He was doing a couple of TV interviews yesterday, and I saw him. And also he was doing some Facebook stuff, and he's going through, different areas of Sarasota and Siesta Key and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just devastated. I mean, just devastated. And all these homes, with everything that they had, the water damage, they're repairing and everything else, but everything is out in front of their house. And that's one of the things that DeSantis was talking about. You saw that one, was it Pinellas County where they were closing the landfill? And they closed it. He was like, "No, open it up." And they forced it open. Said, "We need to get that stuff." Those things become projectiles. We're trying to get as much as that stuff into the landfill and out of, off the coast. So one reporter, though, was out there and just going through and saying, "These people had all these bricks, to repair stuff." And she goes, "These become shrapnel. Yeah. These things will go flying through the air.
Yeah.
These bricks are going to be taken right off the ground and, boom." And so it's like you don't want to be anywhere close to it. And you saw law enforcement authorities, like in the certain areas that are in the evacuation zones, saying, "Once we close it, sorry, we're not sending law enforcement in."
No, they can't.
We're not sending any law enforcement.
It's not survivable.
Right.
That's what is the bottom line for any storm of this magnitude. And even if it makes landfall as Category 3, that's not a small storm.
No, it's not.
Those aren't light winds. This is something that will absolutely shred structures. It is not survivable. You can't put first responders out there. You have to get out of the way of the storm. Everyone has to be out of the way of this storm. Full stop.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Coming up, the latest polling. Washington, we have the debt numbers are in. Well, at least it wasn't $2 trillion. It was only $1.8 trillion.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. No need to worry.
And with an increase in almost $500 billion in tax revenues.
Yeah.
And still $1.8 trillion deficit.
Good to see we're on the right track. Everything's fine. We said back when Obama said, well, the national debt, you don't have to worry about the deficit and the debt. There's no problem with the deficit or the debt. It's like saying, listen, your kitchen's on fire, but you're in the bedroom. You're fine.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem at all. What's on TV?
And the editing from 60 Minutes. Who would have ever thought that would happen?
I'm shocked. A totally different answer by the time it airs on 60 Minutes? What? Huh? No.
From what they put out, allowed out in the promo.
On Face the Nation, yeah.
Right.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Latest update from the National Hurricane Center, the 1 a.m. Central update. Still 160, Hurricane Milton still 160 miles per hour, moving northeast at 12 miles an hour. And as we talk to the Miami Northwest
National Weather Service.
National
Miami
Weather Service, yes.
Office.
I wanted to make sure I got the right agency.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to George last hour. He said, it's been moving where the eye wall is going to hit, has been moving a little bit south of Tampa, and it still looks like that is the trajectory right now.
Yeah, and he mentioned that will change the nature of the storm surge, where the highest storm surge is going to be. And as they were looking at it yesterday, that worst case scenario in Tampa, bringing a storm surge that would be it's going to be devastating. This is, if you're talking 10 to 15 feet in some areas, it's going to be devastating no matter where it hits. You look at the more populated area, and in recent years, Tampa's become a lot more populated than the metro area.
Yep.
It's roughly, 3 million people?
Yeah, 3.1, 3.2.
Yeah, and so still everyone in that area, because of the wind field, and they expect it to be even wider than it is now. They expect it to be very wide. Everyone in that zone, anyone in the path of Hurricane Milton needs to be out. It's going to be a devastating storm, something that, quite unfortunately, the state of Florida has seen before. But at this level, it is going to be one for the history books that they go back and study. You're going to see in new engineering, likely a new process or products that come out of this to make homes and structures safer. That's the kind of storm we're talking about, is one that, in the end, has people rebuilding for years, or, in some cases, in many cases, not. The stories after Helene of homeowners that have said the flooding, it's been several times that we've been flooded here, and we don't see any reason to stay. We don't believe we can stay. And that's not going to be the case for everybody, but it certainly is going to be a consideration. What do you do? The first consideration, first and foremost, is to keep people safe. Get them out of the way of this storm. And we've been watching the videos that have been coming out of there, the news reports coming out of Florida, and you see a large number of individuals that are doing just that. They're getting out of the way.
When you see as this moves a little bit south, and you look at it and you see that Fort Myers is on the dirty side of it. Mm-hmm. And you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when Helene hit, that that I've been watching YouTube videos from one from this demolition company that has just as much work as they possibly can get. And the owner of the company, like every couple of weeks, actually goes down the barrier islands and looking at the damage that still exists from Hurricane Ian from 2 years ago. And they're not close after 2 years,
right.
to rebuilding that. And all of a sudden, boom, this is going to hit again. And that's where, and you've seen the video, it's gone viral, the video of the camera last year showing roughly the 15-foot surge on one of the barrier islands. And it's over a time span of about 10 hours when people were still, driving down the road, and 45 minutes later, that road's covered in water. Yeah. And then you see what a 15-foot surge is, and you're like, that's not survivable. And so that's why all the precautions are out there. But, Ian was a Category 5, but the highest winds were 160 miles an hour, and that is where you have Milton at right now, is at 160 miles an hour. It's supposed to slow down. Interesting, because I was watching the meteorologist explain the dry air and the jet stream of where it is, which is going to be pushing down on it. And we've talked, on the hurricane and slowing it down. And they expect it, you see roughly 125 miles an hour is what they're saying right now. But that still is absolutely devastating. So,
well, one of the things that, and you mentioned this yesterday, when it was at its highest winds, which were above 180 miles an hour, had people calling for and considering the possibility of a Category 6 being brought in. And I saw that report yesterday when that story came out yesterday. And again, it was just a discussion. But that is unbelievable that you would have anything above a 5. It's hard to fathom when the highest I've ever seen myself, actually witnessed looking out a window, was 80-mile-an-hour straight winds. When you talk everything above 110 miles an hour, which is a major hurricane, and then it's just on and on and on. It's not a passing storm in that what we have seen from straight winds and passing storm systems in other parts of the country. It's a hurricane that is just relentless. And it seems to last forever. I can't imagine that. And when I saw that story yesterday, I thought to myself, if they actually do start having a serious discussion about a Category 6, Category 5s are rare.
Well, you had, for example, some of the comparisons that have been made. Hurricane Allen in 1980 hit South Padre Island, peak wind speed 190 miles per hour. Allen is considered to be the only hurricane in history of the Atlantic Basin to reach 190 miles per hour in sustained winds. The winds of the storm were so powerful that until Hurricane Patricia in 2015, Allen's peak wind speed was the highest sustained winds in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And, you have Hurricane Wilma, 2005, that hit Florida, 185 miles an hour. That hit. Hurricane Andrew, which is just devastating back in 92.
Yeah.
I had a reporter who worked for me who went down and covered that. And she said the devastation there was just unbelievable. That hit, near Homestead, as we know, Florida, 175 miles an hour. And so Katrina hit. Now, they're talking about the peak wind speed, not necessarily what it hit land at, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because Katrina, for example, the peak wind speed of Katrina was 175 miles an hour, but it wasn't when it hit. I think it hit as a Cat 3, but still we saw the damage from that. But, get out of the way.
Yeah.
That's all. The only advice I have, get out of the way. All right, you ready for this?
All right.
I mean, it's, I just hope the people of the country vote the right way and Trump wins, so we can enjoy the insanity. This I saw on X. All right, I started reading this because it caught my eye.
Yeah.
And it was Vice President Kamala Harris is likely to secure victory in Nevada, thereby gaining 6 electoral votes. Now, first of all, I said, am I high? It's not election night. Why are they declaring her a winner?
Yeah.
What's going on? Or have I time traveled?
There's that possibility.
Or was it a combination of drugs and time travel?
Well,
and
I want to know what kind you're doing, and possibly for a friend where to buy them.
Yeah, so I'm reading this, and it's like, and here's the reason why and everything else. I'm like, where's this coming from? Mm-hmm. And it's like the community notes. These post ads, besides being written by an AI tool, are not based off scientific polling or data, but by an organization claiming to predict world events with astrology.
That, you know what? I didn't even look at the astrology meter, the astrology data. Totally missed that one. What am I thinking?
It's like, my God, it's like everything is just absolutely insane right now. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Well, when the Aquarius is in its 3rd moon of its 4th sunrise on early Tuesday. By the way, when you start talking that way, you sound like her. No wonder they're looking at it. That sounds like an answer. What I just said, as absurd as it is, sounds like an answer she would give in the media that 60 Minutes would immediately edit and not air.
No, I think the best thing you've done so far.
Today is Wednesday.
Yes, exactly. The day of the week stuff to me was the best stuff you've done to describe all this.
Well,
so far.
But I think there's more, because today is yesterday's tomorrow. And as we think of tomorrow may never come. In fact, technically it doesn't. It's always tomorrow. And so tomorrow being Thursday is when we will have the Wednesdays of our past to reflect, and then the future to think about, which is the weekend. And everybody's working
for the weekend. That was
for the weekend. Everybody wants a new romance.
And that's where I went into Everybody Wants to Wang Chung tonight yesterday.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh, just so much fun. All right, here we go. You ready for this audio cut?
Okay, what do you got?
It's good to see that the president is sort of listening to Red Eye Radio.
Yes.
Here he is yesterday.
She is grossly incompetent. Biden was incompetent. She is equally incompetent, and in a certain way she's more incompetent. But so I think that when you see the numbers, you may very well, Ben, see much higher numbers. With a lot of people say it could be because they go out and they see signs. They see Trump signs, but every single house, all over the place. And they're saying, it just doesn't feel like it's that close an election. Now, I don't know, and you always have to assume you're losing by 1 point, because that's probably the best way to run.
There it is, right there.
Thank you for listening, Mr. President. We greatly appreciate that.
And then he ended with this. Here we go.
I just run right till the end. I've worked about 28 days in a row. I have about 29 days left, whatever it may be, 29, and I'm not taking any days off. I just feel I would feel guilty if I took a day off.
There he is talking to Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Yesterday, and we've always said that you run a campaign as if you're down by 20 points.
Right.
I mean, a point is still fine because it's the same thing. You always run as if you're losing. That's the intensity that you go into a game. I mean, I say game. I mean, for example, one of the biggest things is when complaints from football fans is when the team goes into, they're up by 20 points in the third quarter, and they go into a prevent defense, and they let the team drive down the field. Well, we're going to use time. Next thing you know, it's 2020 and you're like, what the hell happened to our lead?
Yeah.
Because you're like saying, okay, let's not go on the offense. The Republicans need to do it. They've got everything. They've got everything because they've got the issues. That's what they have.
Right.
And that's what they don't have. When you think about it, this really is what I'm seeing from Harris. Now, we know why Biden went in the basement. That was okay. Everybody knows even before he became president, everybody knew he was cognitively challenged. Yeah. Everybody knew you don't know what the guy's going to say next, even back then.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, Trump's negatives are so high, just don't say anything, and it's COVID. You can use that as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
But now, and so you could sit there and say, okay, that was strategy. This is the fact of this is to me the first quiet quitting presidential campaign that I've seen from Harris.
Yeah, except for, don't you have to start something before you can quit it?
Yeah. I mean,
she's never gotten off the ground.
No.
I mean, it's weird, and they really do behave in a way that is, my question is, does she even want to be in the race? Did she really want to run for president? You can't convince me that the answer is yes.
Does she wake up in the middle of the night and go, how the hell did I get here? I didn't do anything.
Right.
I didn't win any votes of the people. I'm simply here. I don't want to do this, but I have no choice. Because that's what it seems like.
Well, I think she probably had it in her mind that, all right, I'll serve as Veep for 8 years, go on the talk circuit and be done. Write a couple of books, have a ghostwriter do that for me. And I'm done. Gets a call from Biden. She was talking about this on The View, where she got the call from Biden. I wanted to scream that word out, and I was in a public place in someone's business, and I decided not to do that. But it was, that's the first time I'd ever considered the question. Does she actually want to be in this race? Is she actually interested? Remember, Obama didn't like the gig at all. He didn't like the work at all. He wanted to be the rock star.
Yep.
I don't think she wants to. Sir, you sure can't convince me of that.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. Costs are not the same each month. If 9,600 miles are driven one month and 10,000 miles the next, two different sets of costs apply for each month. For example, if your tractor payment is $1,850 per month and you drive 9,600 miles in the month, your tractor payment is costing you 19.3 cents per mile. Drive 10,000 miles, though, and that same payment will cost you 18.5 cents per mile. This is one of your major fixed costs while paying off a truck loan. The difference in this example is only a fraction of a cent, which may seem like small change, but it ultimately amounts to $960 more annually on the bottom line. Because though fixed costs do not go down over time, you can reduce your cost per mile with more paid miles. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Wow, it's amazing how 60 Minutes edited. They edited the entire interview. We didn't see the entire interview with Harris.
Right.
Why don't you do it live? Why do you edit it at all? But listen how they edited a part of it. The first one, because what happened was Face the Nation on Sunday was on, and so they were playing clips of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were playing the complete answer, to what she would give to a particular question.
Right.
By the time it came out Monday, they changed it.
Right.
Now, why did they change it? Because of the horrible response, because we had said it. 60 Minutes is putting this out. And my God, if this is the best she's doing, this must be a horrible interview. That was the analysis of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did was, on this particular question on Israel, they edited out her complete answer. We'll have that coming up following the bottom of the hour. I don't want to play it now because we're too close to the end, but we'll play it coming up. This shows you the fact that even though it was a pretty decent interview, when it got to the editing stage, because the reaction was so negative, they said, okay, let's make it sound more positive.
Right.
Journalists don't do that.
Nope.
On our website, RedEyeRadioShow.com. Show info with stations, podcasts, and more. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today because just a couple of minutes after we're done here live, you can find it on our app, the show. It becomes our podcast. So, we make it very convenient for you to listen whenever you wish to listen if you can't listen live overnight.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I figured out something yesterday.
Yeah?
Democrats are like my cat.
Yeah. Lost?
Not really. You can't use that analogy because my cat was lost but then found. And Democrats have not been found yet.
Then there's hope in the future for Democrats, maybe.
But Democrats are just like my cat. I have no idea how my cat got out of the house yesterday. I still haven't figured it out. I've gone through the cameras and everything else, but by the time it got to about 2:30 in the afternoon yesterday, I realized my cat's not in the house. And, I searched all over the place. I walked probably 2 miles and drove the car around my entire subdivision looking for that damn cat. Couldn't find.
Did you go to the bar?
No, cat was not at the bar.
No.
And in fact, that's how Tiki got her name, was this photo I have of a cat in a tiki bar. That's how people go,
right.
How'd you name your cat Tiki? And I just show them the picture. Cat in a tiki bar. Sitting at the bar.
That's the first place. When I'm looking for cats, that's the first place I go.
Well, my last cat, Mango, people go, how do you come up with these names? Mango is a Facebook emoji with the cat holding a beer.
Yeah, right.
So I can't find the cat. I'm like, but I was optimistic. I said, this is a smart cat. The cat will find its way back. And so I left all my lights on the outside, and I figured, I bet you she's going to be on, right next to that, on that windowsill, because she's always on the other side of it inside. Well, I get up, shower, throw on my clothes, walk out the front door, I hear, I turn around, there she is. I'm like, all right, come on in. So I reach out, she comes, running up, and you could tell, she's, and so I go to pick her up, and I get the worst hiss on the planet. I pick her up and just throw her in the house, and it's like, okay, you're in. And I'm thinking to myself, this cat's like a Democrat. They are the ones that caused the problem, and they want to blame me. Wasn't my fault. Why are you ticked off at me? Yeah. Just like a Democrat. Yeah. And do I have examples? Yeah. Inflation. You caused it. You caused it. You caused it by putting too much money that wasn't naturally in the actual economic system. That's how you get inflation. You get inflation every single time. Long-term, drastic inflation only comes from one thing, and it's the government spending too much money, putting too much money in to the economy, chasing too few goods. That's how it happens. It happens every time. Go through history, look it up. Doesn't matter what country tries it. The results is the same. People go, well, if the United States, we won't do it because the United States will do it right. Economics doesn't care what your name is. Nope. And so that's what happens. And so what do? Oh, the corporations are greedy. Blame somebody else, just like my cat.
Yep.
My cat was involved in totally irresponsible behavior. Mm-hmm. Wasn't thinking like a human.
There was a bar involved. There was a bar involved. Come on.
So she sneered at me. And that was the first thought that came to my head. I went, what are you, a Democrat? You caused this and you're blaming me? What the hell?
Yeah.
Come on. All right, so there you go. She'll be fine when I get back. She'll be in a much better mood, I'm sure.
Well, she better be, or else you'll do nothing about it.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do? It's a cat.
Just like a Democrat.
Yeah, exactly. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
So 60 Minutes.
By the way, hold on. That's a great parallel on the cat thing.
What?
Because nobody knows how a cat thinks. Nobody can get into the mind of a cat. Cats just seem to be on their own. There's no common sense where all of a sudden, who's the comedian that said it years ago? All of a sudden, like in a flash, they need to be in the other room. And they don't, there's no logic to what they're doing. They lay around a lot. They really never get anything done. For them, it's always about them. It's not about you.
I'm so glad you expanded that.
I think we've hit on something that could change society. I really do. And they're distracted by shiny things. Then again, so am I. So that doesn't say much about me or cats. Quite frankly, I'll just have to be honest about it. Yeah.
I can see one of our listeners. I learned a lot yesterday from Red Eye Radio. Yeah. Like what? Democrats are cats.
They really are. Except I'll say this. If a cat is out in the wild, it knows how to feed itself. Can't say that for the liberals. They'll just sit down and cry. The cat may cry, but it's going to find something to eat.
Oh, man.
My apology to all the cats out there.
I mean, this is such a serious time in our country's history, and every time the show's over, my jaw hurts. I have a little bit of a sore and raspy throat because I can't stop laughing for all the insanity that's going on.
Right.
I'm like, come on, it's serious stuff, and I'm like, man, but it proves that there's comedy in everything. Doesn't matter. There's always comedy.
Well, there is. I mean, it's called an appearance on The View. In fact, it's the closest association to laughter that I've had with Joy Behar in a long time.
All right, let's get to the 60 Minutes audio.
All right.
And we played a ton of the audio yesterday, and she comes off, really bad. Now, even CBS just released clips, but it was a complete clip of the answer that was asking. They didn't tear apart her answer, cut out the first 30 seconds. I don't think they might have. I don't know. But it seemed like there was a complete thought in there. But they clearly edited it, and you can hear it here in one question about Israel. Mm-hmm. Here we go.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Wow.
Those are two very different answers.
And that's another example because if I do an interview, you do an interview in our careers, we play the entire interview.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to edit anything. You only edit to make the person sound, the person you're interviewing sound worse or sound better.
Right.
And as a journalist, that's not your job. That's why, as we have said, the questions were actually pretty good. But the fact is, whoever is the executive producer or the one in charge of actually putting out the final product, because remember, the reason we know that it was edited was because Face the Nation came out and said, okay, let's pick and choose, and everything that Face the Nation put out absolutely destroyed her.
Yeah.
And so they were promoting the fact that this was going to be a special edition of 60 Minutes on Monday night, on Sunday morning. So all of a sudden, boom, let's edit it because she sounds like an idiot. She's not answering the question.
Right. Well, and there had to have been, my question is, was there any communication between her campaign and 60 Minutes, between Face the Nation and the time the interview aired on 60 Minutes? Because the viral response to the answer that was aired on Face the Nation, it was really the story going around on Sunday, going, oh my gosh, here we go again. Word salad, word salad, word salad, word salad. I'm wondering if her campaign reached out and said, hey, can you fix that? Make it a more precise answer so we can, and here would be their position. This is what they would say, I'm sure. We need it to be clear on what she wants to do, which, of course, my response would be, we're going to air the interview as it happened. It's up to her to get those words right, not our editors. But I could see them doing it. She's the current vice president. So she's going to have a little bit of pull. And I wonder if that happened.
Yeah, it was.
It's a very different answer.
Yeah, completely different answer.
It's not even the word salad was edited down. It's a totally different answer.
Yeah.
It's not like they took the answer that aired on Face the Nation and edited that down. And, well, for time purposes, here at 60 Minutes, and we have to be exactly tick, 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 60 minutes. That's not what happened. Interesting, because quite often, in fact, most often, we hear about them editing, and I mean the media in general, not necessarily 60 Minutes, but they're included. Answers from people on the right, they edit to make them sound worse. And in this case, it's, you know what? You know what? It made me wonder. In Hollywood, they do something called looping, where they have to go back and they have to fix something, the inflection of a voice, or they didn't get quite the sound that they wanted on. And so they have to go back and redo some audio for a movie. They have to go back and reshoot sometimes an entire scene. Her campaign calls, hey, we want a do-over. We'll meet you and have her wear the exact same clothes and reshoot the whole answer, because the first one was horrible. It went viral for a reason. And it wouldn't be, sorry, it's not a conspiracy theory to believe that a sitting vice president would call them up and say, hey, we want you to air this. Because they get a copy, by the way, if they do things like this, like quite often the arrangement is we get a raw copy. So they know exactly, they have on record, they're looking at it. They're basically recording everything that was said and getting a recording from, getting the 60 Minutes raw video themselves. The campaign does.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of conservatives, when Bill Whitaker did a pretty good interview.
Right.
You know, there were solid. He could have had better follow-ups. I mean, we would be much tougher on her, but he still asked pretty decent questions. And 60 Minutes knew, they're not idiots. They knew that they were going to be shown to be the political activists they were. By doing this, they didn't care.
Right.
They didn't care if that they'd be called radical political activists and not journalists. They didn't care. They got their marching orders from someone. You need to change this.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Coming up, following the top of the hour, some really interesting, polling numbers on economic issues. Sorry.
The economy.
Don't know what that was.
Hanging out in the bar with the cat, maybe? I don't know. Pick up. Yeah, there you go. There's a cure for that. You know what the cure is? Keep drinking.
Oh, and... man, I'm telling you, after yesterday, I was like, man, they do it on podcasts. Maybe we can get management to allow us. The only thing is we're on radio stations, so the rules and regulations are different.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd have known that.
A lot of these radio stations have good reputations, and they still carry our shows, so we're forced to pretend that we're,
Sober?
Sober.
Yeah. At least it's what we say on the air. I think it's positive.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. How's everybody doing? All right, let's, we haven't done our Scott Jennings update from CNN.
No.
This is actually a day and a half old. But he had on he didn't have on. Al Franken was part of it. Oh, and they just show Al Franken listening to Scott Jennings, and Al Franken is not happy.
Al Franken's probably never been happy.
I'll never forget, because you and I both watched the documentary when Air America came out. Remember Air America, the liberal network that was going to compete?
Yeah, I remember that day.
And you and I watched the documentary, and we couldn't believe it. If you're in radio, you're like, wow, they have no idea how it's done. They
Yeah.
were doing practice radio shows.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding me?
They weren't airing.
Right.
Nobody but the people in the room were listening.
Right.
And I can't prove that all of the people in the room were listening.
I'll never forget that. Oh, yeah, you got to do it like this. No, on the radio, you do it like this. Don't you see? I got to do it this way. It's like, wow.
I'm sorry, y'all, but if we had to rehearse, I'd quit. I would have quit 40 years ago. I would have quit 40 years ago.
You know when I did practice radio shows?
Never.
No, when I was 10 years old and got my first reel-to-reel tape recorder. That's when I did practice radio shows. Hi, here are the turtles.
My buddies, when I was in high school, my buddies used to want me to do my imitation of a DJ. Because remember when when your local bank would have the sign with the time and temperature on it?
Yeah.
And we'd be cruising around town, small town, and then I'd just go into my, time and temperature thing. Hey, 2:47 p.m., 13 minutes before 3 o'clock. It's 89 degrees out. Not hot just yet. It's going to get even hotter as we come up. We got Bon Jovi, 5 in a row from your favorite rock band. Dan the Man is up next. The man with a plan, the man in command, the man in demand, right here on your favorite rock station. And I do this in the car as we're cruising around town, and they're like, you should think about doing that. And I'm like, I'm not getting into radio. And less than a year later, when I was 18, I started my radio career.
Well, it's funny because I guess that's what you do when you eventually end up in radio. You memorize stuff like that, as I did, from George Carlin, Class Clown, and
mine was made up, but yeah,
right, the sports guy,
right.
Good afternoon, sports fans. Biff Barf on the Biff Barf Sports Spotlight, biffing up all the details and barfing them right back at you. Got a partial score here, Philadelphia 6.
Yeah,
that was to me.
I found it easy to make the stuff up on the fly, and it just kind of came to me. I don't know. I was just trying to make, more than anything, make people in the car laugh.
I would have one critique of what you did there.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough puke.
Yeah. No, I couldn't do that.
You need a little bit more
play.
Yeah, a little bit more puke in the buzz.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But this is Scott Jennings here talking about Kamala Harris, on the border in the 60 Minutes interview, where he kept saying, because Whitaker was trying to make the point, you caused it. You caused it. You caused it. He kept, going back to that, and she just wouldn't acknowledge that at all. From day one, we've been, no, but you did these things. She never, the interesting thing is, Biden would deny we did nothing when we got into office to change what was going on at the border.
Yeah. Right.
Well, Whitaker's pounding her on it. She doesn't deny it ever.
No.
She never denies it. She never says, no, we didn't. But here's part of his analysis on it. And I wish you could see the video because Al Franken's just like, he doesn't know what to do. But here we go.
Let me give you the political reality that we're in right now in October.
Sure.
Huge majority of the American people believe and know that we have an illegal immigration crisis in this country. Kamala Harris got asked 3 times on national television tonight if it was wrong to change the executive orders the way they did on day one that allowed this huge flood of people to come in. She would not address it because she knows how politically damaging it is. There are people all over this country and every political party, and independents too, who know full well that if she becomes the president, we're going to have a permissive immigration structure, even more permissive than we had under Biden. And they believe Donald Trump will crack down on this, and that he has the common sense viewpoint that, hey, maybe we don't want violent people in here. No, they don't go down the list and say rapist in, rapist in. They just go down the list and say in. Why don't we know if they've been convicted of a crime in another country? It's broken. He will crack down on it. She will not, and everyone knows it.
And they're furious at him for doing that. But that's what the American public believes.
Yep.
The American public, every Democrat knows. This is where even every Democrat knows when, because Jennings got pushed back on it. Every Democrat knows that those Democrats are lying to them.
Yeah.
Every Democrat knows that Kamala Harris wants just as much of open borders as much as Biden does. How do we know? She said it.
Yep. Yeah.
These aren't.
You're either okay with the lie, or you're completely turned off by it, and you're not saying anything one way or the other. There's no outrage over it from the left.
Right.
We haven't seen any backlash toward her. I'll say this. in recent days, the liberal activist media seems to be a bit upset that she's not being far left. They haven't gotten specific and come out and shown their anger, but they're doing this, the analysis from CNN that we played earlier. Well, that's not the typical answer that you would get at blah, 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 like this isn't what she has said, blah, 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 blah. They know she's lying. And the far left isn't happy. I don't believe anymore they're okay with it. Maybe at first, okay, look, if she can get elected by doing it, then maybe we'll just keep quiet about it. But then things weren't going her way. Then they realized, well, no, this isn't working. And it's not working, we believe, because, this is the far left, because she's not owning her radical views. And that's really the landscape on the left. But we're not seeing any, by the rank and file voter, I don't think we're seeing much. Now, is it that they're turned off by it and it's the reason there is no real energy behind her campaign? Think about this. I said this, was it yesterday or the day before, that I said, I really don't believe her problem is underexposure. In fact, they're reaching the point now of overexposure. And I think 60 Minutes and The View combined, you're getting to that point, no doubt. And the point being is that there's not anything that you're going to reveal. There are no revelations here from her campaign, from her, nothing new that you're going to unveil, no idea or plan being launched. There's nothing new. It's more of the same, which is why she wasn't doing interviews to begin with. So her problem isn't underexposure. It's overexposure at this point.
I think we played the audio of it, but last Friday, I don't think we really talked about it much, though. When she froze because the teleprompter stopped.
Yeah.
And she kept saying 32, 32, 32. And as was pointed out, National Review, Jeffrey Blair wrote column, Kamala Harris doesn't even know her own stump speech, and then talks about how she talked about getting the coveted Magic Johnson endorsement because talking to Detroit Pistons fans. It's like, oh, my
exactly.
God. What a great point. He goes, that surely relates to them. But then how she got stuck on just the number 32 and how she stumbled and mumbled and had no ability to ad-lib, and you could see the panic look on her face. And this from somebody who's been in politics for well over 20 years, apparently, you would think has given a number of speeches, claims she was a tough prosecutor, yet she can't ad-lib at all. She completely freezes and panics. Yeah. I mean, it's something that, and any of us who have ever been in the speech-making business, not as much anymore just because of the shift that we do, but I used to do during the busy season probably, 3 to 4, probably 3 during the busy season, luncheons, dinners, whatever. And I've given, I've emceed, I've given speeches to, crowds as big as 3,000-4,000 at a time. And I used to have notes. I used to put notes down, like highlights, here are the talking points. And it got to the point, and this is the best thing ever, because it really is what talk radio prepares you for, is the fact that you can go and somebody says, we need you to do a speech. I need it to be 30 minutes long or 20 minutes long. And could you do it on this topic? Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go up and I can do it. I could do it today. If somebody said, go do it, I could do it. Now, I might miss a point or two, but I could give a completely coherent speech, throw jokes in there, do whatever, because of the training I've had in radio. Mm-hmm. Radio prepares you for it, because I must be careful, because when I said a couple of months ago, what we do is ad lib. Some troll. See, you guys don't know. Everything is ad lib. There's no facts there. Ad lib does not mean that you don't bring facts to it. It means you know the facts in your head.
And when you've been doing it this long, in fact, I'm better, much better doing ad lib. I was talking to Jim Verdi, Dan Bongino's producer, yesterday about how you present things. Like, I can't, because Jim wrote a book, and I said, I'm okay if I have to sit down and write some things and take some time with it. You have all the time in the world, right? Well, when we're doing this show, if I had to bring notes and read and everything else, we will read from articles because it's important to sometimes get a quote right, if there is a quote, or if we're talking about how it's being reported in that article, we want to make sure we're accurate in that measurement. But it's not notes as to what we believe and what we think should be implemented as policy. And I'd be much worse if the guidelines were, well, you have to come in with your talking points and they have to be on paper and they have to be, oh my gosh, no. Because I don't believe that you get to the heart of it. I don't believe you get down to the real basics of the issues unless you actually know them. And doing it without the notes forces you to be in a position each time to know, actually. It's the opposite of it really isn't as much ad lib as it is ad lib technically as it is the 30,000 hours principle. And that is, when you've been doing it this long, you should know where you stand. And somebody said, I think it was Seinfeld that said, look, if you've been in comedy, maybe it was Nate Bargatze, but they said if you've been doing comedy for 20 years and you're still doing it, people are still hiring you, paying you to go out there, well, then you're pretty good at it. You know how to do it.
Seinfeld said, if you're on the circuit and stayed on the circus, you're precise. He goes, everybody's precise.
Yeah, you have to know your craft.
Yeah, otherwise you don't get to that. You don't get to that point.
And in the arena of public ideas, the issues, there's common issues except for the details of each story, and that's what we do. We comment on stories. Those details change all the time, and it requires you to have the passion and the drive to apply your opinion to those stories every single day. You have to do it.
Kamala reminds me of, and I've said this before, of me in my first couple of years of talk radio. You're afraid to say what you believe because you don't know if it's going to come back and bite you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not really sure what you're supposed to say or where you even stand on the issues. I never wanted to be a talk radio host, so it wasn't like, you mean you became a talk radio host and you weren't prepared? I didn't want to be a talk radio host. I was forced to be one by the owner of the radio station.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do it. That's like a football player being thrown in and say, okay, you got to put on skates and play hockey.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm not going to be any good. What, don't you have confidence? No, I'm not a hockey player.
It's like Michael Jordan if he had gone into baseball.
Yeah, exactly. But, when you talk about writing, too, one of the reasons I'll read articles is because there are some incredible writers. I appreciate great writing because I know I'm not a great writer.
No,
I'm not a good writer.
I love that. And I love when there's somebody, National Review or somewhere that puts the same thoughts that we've conveyed on in print, and we look at that and go, wow, okay. They phrased it with with a great skill, but it's conveying the same idea. I love reading great writing. I really do.
I love it. You just said it. When somebody they're promoting the same idea that you have, but in a completely different way, which you read it and you go, wow, that's great. I got to read that on the air. It's just so good the way that they wrote it. Because excellence in anything, even if it is your opinion and you've stated your opinion, is absolutely worth throwing out there every single time
sure,
because it gives you more ammunition.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. Coming up, the EV mandate backlash, especially in Michigan. Interesting article about that coming up here in a little bit. Trump leads, by the way, on every Reuters poll. Every major economic issue, Trump leads, poll says.
It'd be impossible to believe that he didn't lead. There are a couple of things that we've talked about. We often, as a society, but here in the States, the way that election cycles work, when you're in a situation right now that everybody knows was caused with inflation, caused by the Democratic Party and the spending, the overspending, and then they also saw where the economy was going leading up to COVID. Under Trump, we're always in this mode of, man, I wish we could return to the years when blah, blah, blah. And it's not that far ago. It's, again, we're going back to essentially the beginning of COVID. So a little over 4 years ago, when the economy was doing great, actual jobs were actually being created, not returning to the marketplace. And people had spending power. In fact, their spending power was increasing. Their buying power was increasing as families, and they were nowhere near where they are today. So it'd be impossible to believe that she would have a lead on any economic issue at all. And makes me wonder if this poll, in fact, underestimates.
No, I've seen some of the polling where it shows Trump only up by 6 or 7 or 8. I'm like, that's not true.
No, I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either.
Right.
Now it's a Reuters poll.
Yeah.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just interesting what's going on in Michigan, Eric. And editorial board of the Wall Street Journal had a editorial, Michigan and the EV mandate backlash, talking about how Trump's in play in Michigan big time, as we know.
Well, we talked about it with the auto workers strike and how that is going to play out. You and I have been covering the UAW stuff and auto workers unions. Well, I mean, basically, probably since before we were together, I'm sure. But as a team going on 20 years now, we're in our 20th year together, and we've done it multiple times. And it was, at first, it was the EPA mandates, then it became the EV mandates, and the EV mandates catapulted it in a way that, because when we look at the EPA mandates over the years, making cars with internal combustion engines more expensive along the way, that made it more cost prohibitive for the consumer, and that changes the marketplace. In a booming economy, in a growing economy, there's less of the political effect. So it's like, okay, there's a little bit of an adjustment. It still is a negative, but people will still adjust because, again, their buying power is increasing. When you get to the point of an EV mandate, a set of EV mandates, now you're changing the entire equation altogether. You're changing all of the power infrastructure in terms of the energy used for these vehicles, the vehicles themselves, the price of the vehicles, the maintenance of the vehicles, the valuation, and all of that. And then, because we always look at, okay, how does the consumer respond? If there was a massive wealth expansion and a huge natural demand, an organic demand for EVs, then the OEMs would abandon internal combustion engines without a mandate. And this is what would be happening. And when that happens, we'll know it because that's exactly how it will go down. Well, you look at it now, the unions, and we've always asked the question, well, wait a minute, for the members. If you're building something with the EV mandates, as the result of a mandate, That's not demand. That is a government-forced marketplace, which never works out. That's never going to be profitable. And at some point, it means that your jobs will be on the brink.
You and I have been talking about it for 20 years because for 20 years you've had Democrats out there promoting illegal immigration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you and I go back, and I don't know, what is it, 15 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
When you had so many illegal immigrants on construction sites in Nevada.
Yep.
And Harry Reid was asked the question. He goes, there's not one illegal working on any construction site in all of Nevada. And then they started interviewing some of the local union reps.
Right.
The union reps are going, what are you, out of your mind? They're all, it's all over the place. It's happening.
Right.
And you had the union leadership in favor of illegal immigration. And we said at this point, look, union members aren't stupid, but, you're still putting these people in office who are betraying you. Then when it came to electric vehicles, we simply said this, that doesn't matter whether I don't care whether you're pro-union or completely anti-union. Unions don't have a chance if the companies can't make a profit.
Yeah.
Through government mandates.
Right.
And that's what happened with the EVs. And so I don't know I can't remember, the exact year we started on the narrative of EVs. It might have been a year or two after the illegal immigration stuff with Harry Reid.
Mm.
But we just started saying, unions, what are you doing? And you finally got to the point, was it this year or last year? I forgot, it was either the end of last year or beginning of this year, where I think it was this year, where we said, look, if the government is putting mandates on and giving you subsidies to make a product that Americans don't want, and the only reason some Americans are buying them is because of status and, they're richer.
Yeah.
And subsidies is what is making those people more likely to buy that vehicle, and still the companies can't make a profit on it, on a product that will produce fewer jobs because it takes fewer people to produce an electric vehicle. Well, you're dooming yourself.
Yeah.
And we said at the time, and we've been pounding on it the last couple of years, to the point where we had some friend of the union member was a friend of who was it? The head of the UAW,
right?
Who called us up and was like, "You guys are just wrong." We're not wrong.
Right?
You're betraying your union. You're betraying them. You might as well be the biggest capitalist in the world who is anti-union completely.
Sean Fain, yeah.
Sean Fain, yeah. Sean Fain he's betraying you. He's a traitor, and you're paying his salary.
Yep.
Well, when you heard the other day the Teamsters president talking, you and I said, my God, that could have been us. It was almost word for word the stuff that we have said about what the union leadership and the Democrats and the liberals in power are doing with the EV mandate. And so it's easy for people to understand. You've finally seen the shift because it doesn't matter whether you're pro-union or anti-union. Unions don't stand a chance if the companies aren't profitable.
Right.
That's not a hard economic concept to understand.
Well, and when you look at in the past, Gettelfinger and what was going on in 2008, 2009, eventually the bridge loan that was turned into a bailout completely for GM. But in the year 2008, the OEMs were bleeding cash, billions and billions of dollars. And Gettelfinger, after all of that, in the wake of all of that, sometime in 2009, 2010, actually came out and said, look, we need these companies to be profitable. I mean, he said that. We kind of carved that out. And yes, we're cherry picking, but it was the reason that stands out, that moment stands out and deserves to be cherry picked is because it's not the norm for union leadership. And it proves our point that we know that they know that these companies have to be profitable. The entire purpose of the union is to have those workers share in those profits. But there is nothing to share if there are no profits. That's the entire goal of the union.
And then you got to the point, 'cause it was this year we were pounding on the UAW leadership, and then it got to the point where this is how posterior backwards the union leadership was getting. The union leadership was demanding taxpayer subsidies to pay the workers' salaries.
Yeah, right.
Since you've given the tax subsidies, since you've given the subsidies to the automakers, you need to give the subsidies to the workers.
Right, yeah.
And it's just like, are you insane? That's not how you build a successful economy. Well, Wall Street Journal talks about the fact that the Trump campaign and others are blanketing Michigan with ads targeting the administration's EV policies. Attention auto workers, Kamala Harris wants to end all gas-powered cars, warns a new Trump campaign ad. Her push requiring electric only is failing big, and Michigan auto workers are paying the price. Massive layoffs already have started. You could be next. Ms. Harris tried to counter the ads at a rally on Friday in Flint by declaring, contrary to what my opponent is suggesting, I will never tell you what kind of car you have to drive. Well, that's not the concern. The concern is not her saying, I'm not going to tell you what kind of car you have to drive. Mm-hmm. Our concern is she's telling you what kind of car you have to buy.
Right.
But here's what I will do. I will invest in communities like Flint. We will retool existing factories, hire locally, and work with unions to create good-paying jobs. Translation, the government will provide reparations to auto workers whose jobs are destroyed by its climate policies. And that's it right there.
Yep.
I mean, that shows you right there. She can't even say, I said, I'm not going to tell you what to drive. I'm definitely telling you what to buy.
Right.
Because the mandates, because of the EPA mandates on automakers, are forcing them to produce electric vehicles and to take gasoline-powered vehicles off the road, which then the process of the government doing that limits the supply of gas-powered vehicles that people really want, which will drive up the cost of gas-powered vehicles and hopefully force more people to go to EVs. Oh, we're not telling you what to drive. We're just putting in such regulations where gas-powered cars become so unaffordable. And yeah, so are EVs, but our goal is to try through government subsidies and taking your taxpayer dollars and subsidizing the industry, even though we haven't figured out a way for them to make a profit on it, is to make it maybe EVs can be more competitive or a little bit more competitive. And then we'll finally because we'll reduce the number of gasoline vehicles available, and EV will be cheaper. But it's not because the competitive marketplace is making them cheaper. It's basically government subsidies over and over and over again.
Yeah.
They're not cheaper. They may be cheaper to you on one end because a whole bunch of other taxpayers are paying for it, and you can't afford to buy a gas-powered vehicle because they're limiting the supply.
Right.
This isn't rocket science.
No, it isn't. And we're seeing signs of union membership in other unions. And we've also seen, by the way, UAW, anecdotally, we've had feedback from UAW workers who over the years haven't been happy with leadership and their support of such policies. But there's no way any of the union members can look at these policies unless you're close to retirement and you're not going to feel the full fallout. But you know the union isn't long-term if the company's not long-term in profits. It's only a matter of time. You know, the Longshoremen Union, look, we're talking about the movement of commerce, and automation is going to be a future of that. It's only a matter of time. We've seen automation hit the factories, including auto manufacturing. But if you're a union member, you have to be looking at the very core of what's going on with profitability and what the mandates are. And you have to know, or you're in complete denial. Again, if you're on the brink of retirement, that's one thing. But is your pension going to be there? What's going to happen in the future with the profits of these companies? Look, they were on the brink in 2008. If not for the foreign arms of the domestic OEMs, it would have been before the fall of 2008. That's when everything was just really crashing. And they were bleeding cash hard. And their saving grace was the profits made overseas in emerging markets. Well, on this, you're changing the entire dynamic. We're not talking about a global recession. We're not talking about we're talking about a choice where the government comes in and says no more of these types of vehicles, and it's not what the public wants. These cars are being bricked out there or they're being used as bricks out there on parking lots. We've heard it from dealers, people that we know at dealerships that are saying nobody wants them. There's very little demand. You have right now, I believe, a market saturation with little exception of new drivers coming into the market that want to check out EVs, but it's not a growing demand by leaps and bounds. It's not organic demand for sure that drives these mandates. It's policy.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So it's interesting to see in Michigan, especially if that message is getting through, and from the majority of the polls that showed Trump either leading or tied or whatever. And I think, were you telling me that only one poll out of the last few had Harris leading?
Yeah, I was looking at different state polls at RCP. And, you know, I mean, when you look at, and I forget which state we were on during that break.
It was Michigan, you're right.
Was it Michigan? Yeah. And so, you know, that was Michigan and Wisconsin are two that we're watching along with what's going on in Pennsylvania. I think, you know, those are going to be the ones to watch. Those are going to be the polls to look for movement.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hi. Hello. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, here we go. I mean, this election does look a little bit like 2016.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 3.5 weeks before the election last time where you saw the polls moving. And especially the internal polls. That yesterday seemed to be, at least for me, the first indication that there was more of an acknowledgement from the general media that she's in trouble. One of the reasons is because the change in her now, you know, all over the media.
Right.
Well, all over some media. You know, and the 60 Minutes interview didn't go good.
Nope.
And the editing by 60 Minutes is not going to be looked at favorably whatsoever by independents. then the rest doesn't matter, except for the fact that she killed herself on The View. She couldn't think of anything that she differed with Biden during his administration.
Right.
That was just killer. And even CNN was talking about it, going, yeah, that was just really, really bad. You and I, though, were talking about Michigan, just looking at different states and the whole EV mandate in the Wall Street Journal editorial.
Yeah.
And I said you were telling me that some of the polls are showing that Trump is doing a lot better in Michigan. In fact, the majority of the latest polls, I believe, show him winning.
Yeah, so you look at basically everything from September 20th forward, which is the latest that they have at RCP for Michigan. And they include a total of 4 polls, Atlas Intel, the 20th through the 25th of September, 918 likely voters with a margin of error of 3. And it shows Trump leading by 4. He's got 51, which is interesting, putting him over 50, and her at 47. New York Times, Siena. This is 921 through 926. 688 likely voters. They do not disclose the margin of error there, and she is ahead by 1. I have to assume that the margin of error
that just came out yesterday, right?
Was that the one that posted yesterday? That's one that posted yesterday, maybe. But there's then the Trafalgar Group, which I believe was one of those that posted yesterday. The 28th through the 30th of September, 1,086 likely voters. Margin of error, 2.9 points. And Trafalgar is a Republican pollster, just for those that don't know. And Trump leads by 2 in that one again, a margin of error of 2.9. 47 to 45 are the numbers there. And then there's the MERS Michigan News Source poll, which was one day only, the 30th of September. 709 likely voters, 3.7 on the margin of error, and Trump leads by 1. I find that one interesting because it's a local news, basically a local state pollster, and the methodology there is always interesting to me when state news agencies or local TV or newspapers do a poll. It quite often, especially in a state like Michigan, is going to favor a Democrat, and that wasn't the case. I don't know a lot about their methodology, to be clear. So still with a margin of error of 3.7 and Trump leading by 1, what you see here is now in Michigan, that puts the RCP average of what they have, a total of 8 polls listed here going back to September 16th that has Harris leading by 0.5 in Michigan, which means it is tied. That's virtually tied. But the trend since the 20th, especially when you look at the Atlas Intel, with him at 4, and that's outside of the margin of error.
Which, remember, too, that was one of the most accurate pollsters of 2020.
Right, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. If that still stands, and we'll only know in hindsight after the election and the results come in 2026, we will be able to tell which ones were accurate, which ones weren't. The point being, though, as you look at these states, I think right now the 3 most intriguing states to me, actually there's 4. Talking to Jim Verdi, the producer for Dan Bongino yesterday, and he brought up Nevada, and I think we could add that to. It is one that I've been looking in on too, but it is also one that is seen as a toss-up right now. But of those toss-ups, the 3 that I've been looking at more closely here lately have been Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And I think it's interesting what you see in Michigan. Wisconsin, you still have it. She's leading by 0.8. So, again, we're getting close to certainly well within the average margin of error there. And then you jump over to Pennsylvania, where on the the list of pollsters there from Real Clear Polling, a part of Real Clear Politics, RCP. The latest 4 polls or 5 polls going back to the 20th of September have either a tie or Trump leading by as much as 3 in Pennsylvania. So now he's got an edge of 0.2 on the RCP average in Pennsylvania. The point being is that the cultures and concerns by voters in these 3 states, you talk about Rust Belt, working class, you talk about unions in Michigan. We talked about that last hour, the UAW. But there is a similar culture, mindset, and as such, list of concerns by voters in those states, especially the Great Lakes states. And we had talked about it in 2016 when we started noticing change about 6 weeks out of the election, then saying, watch Pennsylvania because we don't buy that she's got that much of a lead in Pennsylvania. You and I don't have a lot of trust in the pollsters right now, but you still see the trend. We look at movement as we've always done, and you see the trend going further and further in these battleground states toward Trump. But those 3 specifically, if he wins Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, you believe he takes the election. I think he does too. I think if he takes Pennsylvania, there's a good chance he takes Michigan and Wisconsin. Arizona, he's got a healthy lead in many polls there. But then also you look at Nevada. When you look at Nevada, the Insider Advantage poll that came out, 800 likely voters, margin of error 3%, 3 points. But he's up by 1 in that, 49 to 48. She leads, but she hasn't had. I think this is an outlier poll. This Bloomberg poll that was the 19th to the 25th of September from Bloomberg. It is a margin of error of 4, and she's over him by 7, 52 to 45.
But I look at those polls are almost a month ago.
Well, that's what I mean. You have to go back a ways, and what have we started seeing in the last week and a half to 2 weeks? We see the trend more and more going in favor of Trump, especially in the battleground states, and that's where I think right now, and in the toss-up states, you see in Nevada, look, the service union there in Nevada, they came out and they endorsed Kamala Harris. Where are the union members on that? I mean, again, I don't know that a union endorsement for Kamala Harris carries as much weight as it has in the past for Democrats. And the point being is because we're seeing a lot of breaks in the rank and file with members in certain unions. I don't have data in front of me on the service union in Nevada. They are big when it comes to the resorts out there. I mean, they run the place. I was actually one time in my hotel room. I happened to be getting up. My wife and I were there on vacation. We happened to be getting up anyway, but we were staying downtown. This tells you how long ago that was. And we were staying downtown, and then right outside our window at 7 a.m., the union, the food workers union, the service union, was banging on pots and pans on the street as they were picketing. And it was a nice wake-up call for those that weren't already awake. And so they have a really strong footprint in Nevada. But it makes me wonder where the rank-and-file member is, only because, again, in a lot of the unions, we're seeing more and more a break in the ranks to the point of a couple of major unions now not endorsing Kamala Harris, and that's just as good as an endorsement for Trump.
One of the things I think we should look at, because I don't really like going by Real Clear Politics average. Because
right, I don't either.
When you look at it, for example, let's look at Michigan, because this is something that I believe is important. If you look at it, you go to anything that was, let's go to the ones that were done after the 20th, at least started on the 20th of September, okay? Mm-hmm, remember, that's 19 days ago,
right?
Which is huge. I mean, so much has happened in that particular time. But you look before that, all right? You look before that, going back to the middle of all these polls done in the middle of September, all right? USA Today poll, Harris +3. Remington Research, Harris +2. Rasmussen, a tie. Bloomberg, Harris +3. and Cook Political Report, Harris +3. Then you take everything, 920 from that point on in Michigan, every poll done.
Yep.
Atlas Intel, the most accurate pollster, one of the most accurate pollsters in one of the top 2, I believe.
Yeah.
Atlas Intel, Trump +4. That's 920 to 925. New York Times Siena, 921 to 926. Harris +1. Trafalgar, again, one of the top pollsters. I think one of the top 2 pollsters for the 2020 election. Trump +2. MIRS, Michigan News Source, Trump +1. 3 out of the 4 latest polls have Trump up.
And one of those being Atlas Intel, again, the most accurate, the last election season, the last presidential election season.
And Trafalgar also.
And Trafalgar. But
right.
but the one I'm pointing out here for Atlas Intel is outside the margin of error.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when you look at that, and that was my point to you during the break earlier in the show, and why I wanted to get to that, is that you go from, and this is where we started to see the trend. It's also where we started to see a different response in the liberal activist media to what her campaign was doing. They seem to be getting more and more frustrated and to the point of being angry at times about her campaign and the approach and the tactics being used or not used. And you know that they likely have some word on what's going on with the internals, what her campaign is seeing. And look, you've had surrogates, in fact, for Trump that have talked about their internals showing that he's doing very well. They don't get specific in that. They can say we're confident based on our internals. They're not going to get specific on that. But when you look at the trend of these polls in that time period, over the last few weeks, there is that building frustration in the liberal activist media. There's the trend in these polls, and more reaction, negative reaction to what she's doing or attempting to do in the media.
Looking at Arizona, too, for example, 920 on, okay? That at least the poll started at least on 920.
Right.
Trump +1, Trump +6, Harris +2, Trump +3, Trump +1, Trump +2. Well, and so you see you see as in a number of states that as you look at the latest polls that it is much more favorable for Trump. Nevada, then inside advantage, again, one of the top pollsters, the latest poll, Trump +1. And then American Greatness, Trump, Harris +1. Atlas Intel, now these at 920 to 925, Harris +3. Cook Political Report, Harris +1. Excuse me, that was before. So the ones, Harris +3, and that's right at the margin of error. Then Harris +1, margin of error is 3.7 there. Trump +1, margin of error is 3.
You look at Pennsylvania. That was it applies to Pennsylvania too. Any of these polls that started on September 20th. There you have Fox News, which is a tie. Trump +3 in the Atlas Intel, which is as a point higher. It's outside the margin of error on that one. Trump +3 in Trafalgar. That's, again, just barely, but outside the margin of error on that one. A tie from Emerson. And then insider advantage, Trump +2. So everything, again, there seems to be this trend of from September 20th on, it really started to trend more toward Trump in these states. This is very similar to what maybe even, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers from 2016, but this is has a very similar feel to 2016.
Right. Here we go.
Sure.
The last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 polls in North Carolina starting at 923. Now, remember, none of these go into October yet.
Right.
None of these.
Yeah.
The final is, I think, 9:30 for one of the polls.
Mm-hmm.
But here it is. The last 5 for North Carolina. Trump +2, Trump +1, Trump +1, Trump +2, Trump +1.
Well, Wisconsin, if you go from any of the pollsters that started on the 20th going forward, there are only 3. But if you were to do an average of those 3 polls, then Trump would be ahead by 1 in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Again, we'll see where the trend goes, but that seems to be the case, and September 20th seems to be that magic date. We'll see.
And by the way, in Wisconsin, the top 3 polls you just mentioned, 2 of the top pollsters, Trafalgar and Atlas, both have Trump in the lead.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Once a roadside inspection is completed, the officer will close it out, which involves the officer writing or typing up the report. The more the officer found during the inspection, the longer this will take. If violations were discovered, most officers, as a courtesy, will explain the violations to the driver. If there were any out-of-service violations, the officer will normally explain what must be done to get the out-of-service order lifted. Drivers need to be very attentive during this part of the inspection. The driver also needs to read and understand the complete inspection report. After receiving the inspection report, the driver has 24 hours to get the roadside inspection report to the motor carrier. If the driver will not be returning to a company facility within the next 24 hours, the driver needs to know to get it on the way to you via email, mail, or fax within 24 hours. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric, for example, looking at one more of the what they call the battleground states here on Real Clear Politics, Georgia, for example.
Right.
Out of all the, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 polls. This goes back to the middle of September. Trump plus 3, tie. Trump plus 4, Trump plus 3. Trump plus 1, tie, Trump plus 2, Harris plus 3, Trump plus 2, Trump plus 1, tie, Trump plus 5.
And
now,
that's Quinnipiac.
I know that's, so that means
he could be up by 15 or 20.
Exactly. Don't take my joke.
Oh, sorry.
You're stealing my joke. That was supposed to make me look good. Not you.
We think too much alike.
That was my joke.
You're reading along, and I'm stuck on this Quinnipiac. I'm like, oh, my gosh.
Well, I was waiting, because it was the last poll, but I was like, this is perfect. And the latest poll.
Sorry.
Well, plus
I didn't
5.
mean to step on your line there. Wow.
Yeah.
But it's true.
It is.
He could be ahead by 20 points in Georgia if we look at Quinnipiac's record.
The show that never stops. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. So, yeah, showing you all the battleground polls and trying to put some perspective in it, because I think I don't think any of the polls that we mentioned there, none of them cover October, and a lot has happened in October, and so. But if you look at it, you see that the Real Clear Politics average, when it comes to over the last, take October out of it and go back 10 days of September, and it shows in the majority of states except Nevada, Trump is leading.
Yeah,
in every one of those battleground states.
Right.
And I think it's important because you're getting closer to the election, therefore people are more certain, less undecideds. And so I think that's important to bring up. But to the campaigns themselves, it's their own internal polling.
Yeah, the internals are showing something.
Which means they trust their internal polling. I had someone wrote to me the other day and said, well, you guys are doing the polls. You shouldn't do the polls. It's the betting market because people are betting money. Well, people make stupid bets all the time. That's not the point. Where do they get? How do they make their bets? What are their bets based on?
Right.
It's got to be based on polling that they trust.
Exactly.
It all goes back to what polls do you trust? What polls do they trust? I mean, the politicians.
Yeah, if Vegas was doing their own polling, then everybody would be paying attention to them because they'd be, well, wait a minute, this is the basis of how they make money. But no, they're launching that off of what the data shows in the polling.
Right, just like bettors use the data of the team sometimes of when emotion doesn't get involved in it of the teams that are playing, but so when you see the change in tactics that you have seen over the last couple of the last 3 weeks, since if you want to go back to the 20th, that's when you saw Trump say, no, not going to do. Not going to do another debate.
Right.
60 Minutes? Nope. Won't need to do it. J.D. Vance, very successful. I don't think any of the polls covered his debate.
Right.
At that point. And you're saying, that's not going to make a difference. It might. I don't know. This is a completely unique election. It might not, but it might. It might add 0.2 or 0.3 of a point.
Right. Yeah.
You don't know. But it wasn't a negative for him. It was for J.D. Vance. It was definitely a negative for Walz. And so you look and you say, all right, well, they must be doing their own polls because why all of a sudden did Kamala Harris decide to do more interviews this week than she's done since she announced, the fact that she was going to start campaigning? Where did this come from? It comes from the polls that they believe that shows they're behind.
Yeah,
that's the only reason. There's no reason to change tactics unless that's what's going on. David Marcus wrote about in Fox News, the joy is quietly turning to panic for the Democrats. And he makes a point that he went out. He actually went out and he said, I would go out and I would talk to Democrats, and they were joyful. They were ecstatic that she was in. And, it's like he said, one woman told me of calling her mother to celebrate together the chance of a black female president. And others said that they didn't love how Biden had been shown the door, but they felt that Harris could turn that race around and defeat Trump. And then he writes, he goes, for a month it sort of looked that way. And he said, in San Francisco, most voters I spoke to, red and blue alike, felt like Harris was likely to win, that the Democrats' stalled campaign had called AAA, gotten a jump, and was back on the road. Harris had eased the lead Trump had over Biden, quickly eclipsing him as the front runner. And much like a new restaurant opening in a small town, voters were eager to give her a try. And says, while Republicans and some of the media were frustrated by her unwillingness to do traditional interviews or hold so much as one press conference, her arrogant advisors smirked and basically said, so what? She's winning. Well, she's not winning anymore. And with her back to the wall, appeared on 60 Minutes this week, showing voters a real reason why she is camera shy when it comes to tough questions. And, they talk about some of the questions that she was asked, and we played them all. He goes, but the most generous interpretation of the statements that she was making was basically she was saying, oh, we're trying. The more likely one is that she has no idea what she's talking about.
Right.
And he said, over the past 2 weeks, a complete change has happened when he tries to talk to Democratic voters. He said it's been increasingly difficult to engage Democrats about the presidential race, much like a fan whose team has dropped a few playoff games and who is avoiding the sports page, or they just don't want to talk about it. Oh, Bills fans. That's okay, I'm a Bills fan, I can say that. As one lifelong Democrat in Ohio who I did get to talk to, who would talk to me, said, I don't know. She's just kind of there.
What? She just kind of there. Wow.
That's true,
A
though.
ringing endorsement. No, that's
true.
That's honestly,
right.
that's the assessment.
He goes, it's hard to say exactly when the shine started wearing off on Harris. He goes, the joy gave way to frustration, but the failure of the Teamsters to endorse her and the massive union's internal polling showing Trump with the lead seems significant. It was only after that I started hearing Democrats uttering the word that seemed unthinkable back in August, namely, maybe we should have stuck with Biden. Ouch.
Yeah.
He actually writes,
yeah.
Ouch. Harris spokespeople have been busy trying to talk Democratic voters down off the bridge. They insist she leads in the polling averages. She has a war chest worth more than Fort Knox and a ground game that Trump can only envy. These points are all true, and the latter may prove decisive, but still there is no mistaking that the thrill is gone. Well, that only is because of one thing. That's what he fails to mention. Why is it? Why is it? Because if she has all these advantages here, they're not working for her.
No, they're not.
And what election was it where we said, I can't remember what it was, and we just said, well, it didn't matter how much money the Democrats had, they can't win on the messaging. That's the problem.
It was 2016.
Was it 2016?
Yeah, because Hillary had raised,
okay,
I don't know, substantially more than Donald Trump. And it was like, okay, but you have to populate the message. The content of the message is what matters. You can spend $10 billion, $100 billion. Gary, you could make up a story about Trump being in bed with the Russians, and it still won't get you the win. And those are the things that, again, those are the things that get you the win, are the things that you got to be. But also what Trump has that he didn't have in 2016. He did have it in 2020 and didn't promote it often enough for our assessment, the assessment of the Wall Street Journal editorial board too. Promoting his accomplishments more in 2020, we believe would have been certainly would have been an advantage. But now, in hindsight, there is the comparison. You heard it from Kamala Harris on The View, and they are the premier talk show of the intellectual base of America.
Of the intelligentsia.
Of the intelligentsia. She said it. She doesn't really differ from Biden. They can't fix the problems because they caused them. And you look back at Trump, the comparison is, well, during the Trump years, and this is what I wonder. There are I have to firmly believe, I think that it's a great possibility, there are a significant number of people who would have never considered voting for Trump until now, until reality hits their door.
I think if you want to look at it, I think it's the reality. It's reality of the fact that inflation is there and still affecting everybody. Inflation has not lessened for anybody in the United States.
Right.
It's still a big thing. Every time you go to the store, you're like, my God, I can't believe it. I just spent that
Right.
amount of money. And I don't care whether you can afford it or not. You recognize that there's an increase in cost. And I think that's number one. I think number two, there was euphoria that Biden was gone. And that Harris was the one, and the Democrats being obsessed with identity politics, black and a woman. All right, this is what we want. Now image-wise, we're there. But I think when they saw her incompetence, I think when they saw her fear to even defend what they believe, and then I really do think, normally in a normal election, I wouldn't think this, but I do think that the union's reaction was such huge news because the liberals carried it. What the hell's wrong with those those union members so many of them support Republicans. What the hell is wrong with them? When that happened, I do think that might have had a bigger impact than people think.
Yeah.
That it made it so people who just wouldn't vote for Trump say, well, why are the unions? The unions have always been Democrat. Why are they voting for Trump? Well, the union people are putting their trust that Trump can make the economy better, and therefore they, companies will make a profit and they can get a better contract with it. Well, if they believe it, because we've known it for a while that the union membership was there, but the leadership wasn't going along. When you had, it was the UAW. No, the UAW endorsed. The UAW endorsed? Which one?
It was the Teamsters that did not.
Yeah, the Teamsters didn't do an endorsement. Right.
Right.
Yeah, right. The UAW did. But still, that was huge because when he got up there and said, I know the majority of our union members don't. But we do. That was huge news.
That was massive.
Right. And then when the Teamsters came out, and if you saw the Teamsters leader the other day, oh my gosh, he sounded like us.
Yeah, he did.
Sounded
From
like us.
20 years ago.
Yeah, he sounded like us. You and I played it. We looked at each other going, he's us.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, but you can't. You're not going to have a union. Your union's dead if the companies don't make a profit because the government is forcing them not to make a profit.
Right.
And when you put it that way and people, union members hear that, they go, whoa. And then other people say, unions are being more pro-Trump? Okay, the economy was better. And if the company's making a bigger profit, they make more money. It all makes sense. Plus, she can't answer a damn question.
Right.
And she looks fearful. And as we said a couple weeks ago, the joy is gone. And sorry, but we have to say it. Walz is just weird.
It's creepy. And, with all the way down to the knucklehead thing, we talked about some of the comparisons, Richard Simmons and Chris Farley, but on the Chris Farley thing, remember when he did the segment on SNL, the bit where he would interview celebrities and he'd go, hey, remember that time you did that movie? And then he'd get angry at himself and go, stupid. That's the knucklehead moment from Tim Walz. It's like this guy is really, it's like somebody, took all of the weird comedy, as you mentioned, Curly from the Three Stooges included, and then in some lab combined all the DNA to make Tim Walz. Throw a little Elmer Fudd in there, too. Hunting wabbits. And that's what you have, a very weird.
Well, I think the biggest shift was Dana Bash and CNN have stopped talking about the great new masculinity that Walz and Emhoff are bringing to American politics.
Yeah.
That died a real quick death, didn't it?
It really did.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up on the top of the hour, we will have the latest National Hurricane Center update on Hurricane Milton. Well, this is what happens when you don't vet people coming into this country. You saw the Afghan migrant who wanted to commit an act of terrorism along with ISIS on Election Day.
Yeah.
We'll get to that coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.